All right, can you just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you are seeing the screen? Right? Are you seeing it when it's being moved? Right, so let's get into it. Right, so I'll skip the introduction because we went through that already. And one of my other tasks as an educator is that I work with the NEI as a part-time inspector as well. And I'm a JTC lead teacher. So I'm involved in the education system from many angles. All right, so we went through that already. All right, so school improvement planning. What is this? It's actually a roadmap that plans out the process of you improving your school over a 3 to 5 years period. So in Jamaica, we work with a 3 year plan and we go through our school self-evaluation where we evaluate the school as is in this moment right now. And we look at data for about 3 years and we draw baseline conclusions as to what is happening in our school system. And then we make plans as to where we're going with this. We will look at the goals and all the stakeholders and all the resources that we will need to put this plan in place for it to be a successful plan for the next 3 years. So the SIP process really begins with gathering and analyzing data. And that's what we'll be looking at today, the school self-evaluation process. And then when we leave out of that stage, whatever we have found now, we start to have meetings and we look at this data and we say, okay, we're starting to make plans. What can we do with this? What do we need to implement to solve the problem that we are looking at? So this is the SIP stage where we look at the operational plan. We start to match the school's goals to the overall ministry strategic objectives. And I'll let you know what those look like in a minute. Then after we have put together this operational or tactical plan that they now call it, we look at how we will implement this plan and how we will monitor it. Because we can have a plan on paper, but an SIP is a live document. It's a working document and it will change based on what is going on in your environment. And even though you write it for 3 years and you have set targets, short-term targets, sometimes we have to go back to the drawing board because, as we say, it's a live document. And sometimes you need to pull and fix to get it to work the way that you want it to work. And then after, you're going to go back and you're going to evaluate after year one. You evaluate again to see that the targets that you set out in year one of this SIP, if you have met any of them, and what you need to revisit to put back so that at the end of the 3 years, it looks like you have made some gain in your plan. All right. Now, your SIP, it's not just about you as the administration head, but you have a team that you work with. And who you put on this team will contribute to the success of your SIP. And as the heading says, teamwork makes the dream work. So your administrator is at the front of the bus. You have your school board. You have your senior management team and teachers that are capable of contributing to this process. Because sometimes in a small school, you may have just 6 of you in the school. So automatically everyone becomes a part of this SIP team. Depending on the size of your school, you may have up to 10 members in your team. PTA and vested stakeholders. Now, when I say vested stakeholders, these are persons that have the school in their interests. They have valuable things to contribute, either monetary or human resources, any type of resources that may help in your SIP to be developed and implemented the way that you want it. And a well-designed SIP is just what it is. As I said before, its success is dependent upon the implementation, the monitoring, and the constant evaluation of the team. There's a typo error there. My apologies. All right, so the first step in your SIP is a collaborative and inclusive one. This is where that you're going to dig out every data that you have in your school to answer questions to tell you where you are at this time right now. It's based on evidence. It's hinged on evidence. It's not a feeling that you have. You have to have something to say. So if I say that my school is, I rate my school with 3 as satisfactory for student performance in national and regional exams. I can't just say that without evidence that says that this is what my data is saying. I have to pull on my data to back it up now to say that at this stage, I am performing at X percentage. So we gather information from these different sources and then we make judgments. And all of this is with a view to bring improvements to student learning because the ultimate goal of a SIP, student is at the forefront of everything that we do for the school. All right, so data is just a collection of facts, numbers, words, observation, descriptions of things. Data goes through 3 processes. And when you just collect information, it's raw. It's probably useless to some level. It needs organizing, processing, and analyzing. Now, when you go into the information stage, it means that you have processed this data. You have disaggregated this data, you have broken it down into manageable pieces so that it can tell you something. So if I pull on some data and I have done my graphs and I have looked and I've made judgments and my team, we come up and we say, okay, we're here. Now, what we do with this data, what we do with this knowledge now, tells us how we put this and plug this into our SIP for the next 3 years. This is where you pull in your specialized interventions and your plans and how you plan to do it, those things. All right. The school is a data warehouse, which we all know. Data is available at every crevice and corner of the school. Even if you are a security guard working at the front of the school, you have something to contribute to the school SIP because they see a lot of things on the outside and they can contribute to valuably to when you're pulling and evaluating school. So these are some of the data that schools will pull on. All right, so we have our data. We begin in our school SIP by looking at the school's profile. When I take up your school profile, I want to see a synopsis of where the school is right now. So you're going to show me your organizational structure. I want to see the vision and mission of your school. I want to see your last NEI report and recommendations. I want to see what, over the last 3 years, what are the different pathways? Let me use a primary school. What are the different pathways of students that I have been sending out, these cohort of students? Have I, over the years, for the last 3 years, the school has been putting out mostly pathway 3 students? Said, hey, something is wrong. So these are the things that we look at in your school profile. And background of the school. This will take in the socioeconomic background. We want to know what kind of community this school is based in, what the population looks like, and those sort of things. Now, in Jamaica, we are standardized in terms of what we put in our SSE. And we are guided by 11 questions, and these are the questions. So we look at the school strengths. We begin with a SWOT analysis of the school. And sometimes you want to leave your SWOT analysis until you have gotten to the end of your SSE so that you will have sound proof that if you said that one of your strengths is that you have high passes in CSEC. When I go and I look at the data, when I get to question 2, it actually shows me that this is a strength of your school. So these are the questions. There are actually 11 of them, as I said. And we're going to now look at some of the things that we do to answer these questions. All right, so in your SWOT analysis, I like to break down my SWOT analysis to look at different structures of the school. So I look at the strengths and weaknesses. And then after I do all of these 8, I now look at the opportunities and the threats that are going to prevent me from moving forward. So I look at my management and staffing. I look at the partnerships that I have, my student achievement and cultural development. I look at safety and security, the physical infrastructure of the school, the students, my ICT capability, and behavior management. And then now we start getting down into real data work. So we look at question number 2, and we want to know how the school is performing in relation to national and regional tests. Now in Jamaica, we do CSEC. CSEC is a regional board. We do PEP, primary exit profile. That is a national exam. That's just for us here, the kids here on the island. And then at the infant level, they look at the 4 and 5-year-old assessments. Now, the data that we look at for infants, we pull on the 4 and 5-year-old assessments. For primary schools, we look at the GYLP. We pull on the grade 3 diagnostic. We look at the grade 4 numeracy and literacy, the grade 5 PEP, grade 6 PEP. When we get to the high schools, we're going to look at the CSET, the CAPE, the City and the Guilds, and the GCE. Not sure if GCE is still going on. All right. Now the internal data. We're going to pull on our mark books, assessment guidelines, cumulative records, the IDRI, the curriculum coverage, and our stakeholder data. How do we disaggregate this data in question 2? Now, when we get our CSEC results, we get our PEP results, they come in bulk, right? So we need to get our team together. We're going to analyze. We want to look at the school's pass rate. For high schools, you look at the matriculation rate. For both high and primary schools, you look at the gender, how the gender is performing. Are the girls performing better than the boys? Is this a trend? And when we look at data, we look at for 3 years because we want to see a trend in the data. We want to know if this is systemic or this is just a one-time pop-up bad result. So these are some of, we can use graphs, we can use tables, we use descriptions, and yes, those are the main 3. We use surveys to pull on data as well. All right, comparative analysis, you compare 3 different years. So this is showing from 2022 to 2023 in CBT, and this would be at the primary level. And this is us looking at how many children are at HP, highly proficient. P is for proficient, D developing, B beginning, and A is absent. So we look at this for 3 years. And if you notice that the core subjects, let's not look at the science and the social right now, the maths and the language. If you notice, mathematics, the developing is very high. Developing is at 63.6. And in the previous year, it was at 18.2. So that means that the children are almost there, but they just didn't get there. So these are things that you look at. So if this wasn't at the grade 6 classroom, and this was probably a grade 5 result. For instance, this was a grade 5 result. And I have a cohort of students where 63% of them were developing. I know that if we put an intervention program in, because this is what the data is looking at us, it's screaming that they're almost there. If we are able to plan an intervention program and stick to this program, I can get this percentage of developing to move over into proficient. And that is what we want as administrators. How to get the students coming out with what they need to survive in this world. All right. We can also, as we said, we can compare boys and girls. And I'm just going to give you a little scenario here. So in a baseline data, now for Jamaica, since 2025 results, the Ministry of Education have started putting out detailed evaluations of the PEP results. So you get a publication along with, you don't just get the raw data anymore, you get an actual explanation of what they picked up, what is the strengths, weakness, and recommendations to move forward. Now, I pulled some school data and we looked at grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6, and this was for language. What this was saying is that 42% in the 40s, average 40, right across the board, is that these students were not able to extract information from sources given. And this would be in the performance task part of the exam. That means they were lacking a skill. What this baseline data is saying to you is that the problem is systemic and not isolated. So the baseline data that you would be able to pull now to move into your SIP is that an average of 44% of students are unable to extract information from sources, indicating a significant and consistent systemic weakness in foundational comprehension skills within your language arts program. So as an administrator, you now have an answer to a problem that you're seeing in your data to move into your SIP with. And this will help you to plan your intervention program because you now have a reason for this slip up. And you can fix or try to implement something to fix this slip up moving forward. You can also break down your data into manageable pieces, but this was before we got these nicely done publications. We would have sat down and would have broken down the database on the skills that the students were tested on based in different parts of the exam. So for instance, for mathematics, when they're breaking down, they're analyzing the results, the students are marked on these 4 concepts. Concepts and procedure, problem solving, communicating and reasoning, modeling and data analysis. And if you notice that the students, their problem solving, most of them were at D, 40%. Communicating and reasoning was also a problem. 88% of them can't communicate and reason what they were seeing. They maybe see the answer, but they can't explain to you what was going on. And this is just another example of how you can. So you look at how your school is performing nationally against all the schools in Jamaica. So if you're a high school, you want to know how Friendship High School is performing against all other high schools in Jamaica as a benchmark. And if you're at a primary school, you're doing the same thing. And then you can also do it in your QEC. You want to know how your school is benchmarking your QEC. How are you doing when you look at all the other primary schools around you in your area? You can also do that. For CSEC, you look at your type of passes. You're passing, you're getting passes, but are they just grade 3 passes? Or you have a caliber of passes? All right, so a total of 930 students were entered for CSEC in 22 subject areas. 822 students actually sat this exam. 50% of the students who sat the exam in 2022 failed the exam when compared to the other year, 37.2. This shows that there was an increase in the number of students who were failing. Now, the number of students scoring grade 3 in CSEC continues to dominate the quality of passes received by the school. If you notice, the one in the red would be grade 3. So although we were passing, the quality of the passes, we now need to look at that. So yes, we get them to pass, but now we need to move from quantity into quality. So we have some data to work with now. So the team should begin to think about how to increase the matriculation rate and quality of passes for the SIP target. So we're now moving this baseline data and we're carrying it over. These are just other ways that you can track your school data and putting them into visual so that you can actually see what the data is saying. And these are just samples. All right. Now, when we get to question 3, we want to look at what we contributed as a school to this cohort of students. Now, the cohort would mean that when I get them in grade 1, when they leave in grade 6, I want to know if I got a set of students who were ready for formal learning based on the GOILP results in literacy and numeracy. But at the end of grade 6, I did not, when you look at both comparisons, we did not contribute much. We want to know where the problem started. Did it start in the foundation years or it went downhill once they started in grade 4 to 6? So these are some of the things when you look at your tracking the student progress. So grade 7 would be for CSEC. When we got them in grade 7, how were they? For grade 1, that goes for the primary school. And then you're going to look at the data to see if they are regressing or they are improving. You're going to analyze things like your IDRI. So if I have students in grade 1 and I'm looking at their IDRI results and I'm realizing that we're not making any improvements of students who are reading above their grade level, something is wrong over a couple of years. And then just making a comparison from the starting to the ending points. So matriculation rate, the pass rate, and overall, as I said before, the contribution made by the school for the students' academic growth. All right, and these are just some of the ways you look at their middle points. So this is an example pulled from a primary section, and we looked at them in grade 3. So that means they would have spent 3 years at primary school. And when we got them in grade 1, 38% of them were ready in literacy, 61 in numeracy. But by the time they get to grade 3, and they would have tested these students, they were at 23%. So what was going on in the foundation years? Were they not mastering their literacy and numeracy skills? And then they begin to climb in the literacy. But if you notice that the numeracy, it is going down. They're going downhill based on what the results said for the tracking these students for over 6 years. So these are some of the things that you will look at when you are ready to pull on your baseline data, because we have to find solution to these problems. And if you look and you realize that this happened to 3 consecutive year cohorts, it means that it's not the students. Something is going on within the school that we need to find and fix. And this is just internal data. All right, evaluation of student assessment and performance. So question 2 and 3, presentation and disaggregation of data. Comprehension, presentation, analysis of this slide is not supposed to be here now. Anyway, let us continue. Analysis of performance on critical examination, evaluation of student progress, attainment targets, trend, benchmarking, reference to your assessment policy. These are things that you will look at when you are breaking down your data for question 2 and 3. You want to present the data into small bits so that when I take it up, if I don't know anything about your school and I'm reading your SSC, I can see what you are seeing based on the way that you have presented it and explain it in your SSC. Now, this data for question 2, when you look at all these student learning, it is aligned to strategic objective 7 and question 10. And you will see how this matches up when we get into the strategic objective part. Now, the students' personal and social development. As a school, you want to know if the ethos of your school, the behavior of the students, the culture, what kind of culture, your vision, your mission, these are the things that you will look at in answering these questions. So you pull on the attendance rate. How many students are on path? Different from the nation's support program. You want to look at how many students you are supporting at school as well. So if I have a school population of 150 students and 50 of them are on path, and as a school, we still support 20 an additional 20 students. That means that almost half of my population at school is on student welfare programs. And that speaks to the type of community and family settings that we have to work with. And it will also affect the type of funding that you can pull in for your students, because you will need to pull in resources, because you know that within the community, there is not enough to pull in. So you'll have to get other external resources to come in to help you based on what you have to work with. Accommodations and modifications for your special ed students. You also look at this. Are they aware of their environment, the co-curricular activities that you offer at school? When you look at the co-curricular activities, what kind of co-curricular activities you have? You look at the attendance of the students in these activities. What are they doing? Is your club meaningful? Because if I have a math club, for instance, and I have a very large school population, and on a monthly basis, when I look at the average weekly attendance, only 15 students are attending the maths club. I need to go back to the drawing board, because I'm not sure that if this maths club is appealing to the masses, and if the club is getting the effect, the desired effect that you want it to. Is it a meaningful club? So these are some of the things that you look at. School behavior management is also pulled in under this question. And where can we find this data? We have them listed here. Your guidance program, your guidance counselors will give you your reports to say the type of incidents they have been dealing with. So when we talk about guidance report, we don't want to know that they deal with such and such case. We don't need those personal things. You're going to put in your general report. So for instance, you will say that you would have to do 15 home visits on an average monthly basis due to student absences, for instance. They can also give you information on the safety and security, what type of incidents are happening at school. You have a lot of fights. Are they fights that draw blood? Stuff like those, the type of incidents that you have to look at. Classroom observations, you can get information from that as well. You will know what kind of attitude the students have towards their teachers, the school, how they interact with their peers, and other operational policies and procedures. So, question to ask for ethos of the school. You're looking at the core value implementation. Ask how these are implemented on a daily and overall in the school environment. You're looking at the school well-being. You want to look at it, the students, they're getting mental health support and the physical well-being programs. Do you have programs for PE? So you know that the students have something to go channel their energy for development. Do you have inclusive practices? Are all students able to go into any club or desired activity? Are you fostering a holistic program where you are? These are some of the things that you look at when you're evaluating. And the community involvement, are you getting the community involved in the school? So sample questions you can pull on from surveys. Are the students, how the students behave? As I said before, the number of suspensions. If you look at the school, they have a lot of suspensions. So you know that, and this was for a grade 7 batch of students. You know that something needs to be done. So grade 7 had the highest number of suspensions, and it decreases as they get older, but you know that something needs to be done here. And the data that I have interjected in here are real life data. All right. So evaluation of the support program for question 4, just summing up, you look at your safety and security practices, disciplinary issues, those things, you pull on those. And the success criteria here would mean that you have a comprehensive analysis of all the student support services and the impact they're making, the strength, the weaknesses, and explain them so you know that where you need to fix up for your SIP. And this is aligned to question 2, 3, and 10 when you get over into the operational plan. Now, you have resources in your school, you need to evaluate if you're using them. If you have a school library, for instance, you have a school library and it's not being used as a library. Can it be used as another space? These are some of the things that you look at. I know that when we had COVID, we had to utilize every space that we had, something for nurse stations and this. So how you pull on your resources. And when we talk about resources, we're not only talking about human resource, material resource, financial resources. So we're looking for human, we're pulling on the academic, you're looking at the other staffs that you have, material resources, teaching resources, the physical structure you have to work with, and the money that you have to spend in the kitty. Now, all of these things, you have to look at them to ensure that do you have or have you been properly utilizing the resources that you have at hand to pull your programs? Because, hey, we know that we're not getting any extra teachers. We may not get the extra money. So how do we work with what we have? So for instance, you have 6 teachers and you need to implement a reading program. The ministry says you're not getting a reading teacher. You have to use what you have. So what do you need to do? You need to retool your teachers because you have teachers, these are your human resources. So these are some of the things that you have to look at and say, how can I get them? How can I implement this program working with what I have without spending any extra money or breaking the bank? So these are things that you look at when you're evaluating. And we align these things back to objective number 9. Now, the quality of your staff. Appraisal, teacher portfolio, training matrix, lesson plans. Now I want to stop just to expound on some of these. Now, your teacher appraisal, when you're looking at the quality of your staff, all right. So for your appraisal, you have a school, and after you evaluated your school, you realize that 60% of your staff scored below 60%, what was rated as unsatisfactory in the most important job that they have to do in the school. And this one speaks to GP number one. Do they know the subject that they teach? And can they demonstrate the knowledge and subject content? No. If as an administrator, you didn't take this as a red flag to say, hey, my staff is drowning, that means you would have missed the baseline data. And these are some of the things that if we don't spend the time to break down, to look at, and to pull on, we're going to miss the things that we need for our staff to move. So here you need to begin to think about digging deep on how can the school improve upon this. Let's go back. Your training matrix. The training matrix has to do with what you observed about your teaching staff for the year that was. So you evaluated your staff. So whatever you pull from the appraisal, whatever you pick up from the lesson plans, all of these things speaks to the training. I'm going to give you another example. All right. For the going back to GP1. So for instance, you've rated your staff. Let me use teacher A. And you went to see teacher A for a lesson. Teacher A was teaching fractions, and teacher was doing the topic addition of mixed numbers. And two things you picked up in the lesson. Number one, the teacher was able to show how to do addition of mixed numbers on the board. So she can show the students how to work it out on the board correctly. However, when she gave the students the tools that they needed to use now in their little setting to explore in the 5E, they didn't get the correct tool. Because in one instance, you gave them fraction pieces, but the fraction pieces weren't enough for them to do what they needed to do. And in another instance, you gave them something that when they were finished with this, or they were measuring out with their measuring cup to show a whole and a quarter and probably 2/4. The student wouldn't be able to tell you what a whole looks like when they're finished because everything was poured out. That means that the teacher has content knowledge, but they don't have pedagogical knowledge. So these are some of the things that you don't just appraise the teachers. I remember that appraisal is not a one shot. You'd have to be observing the teachers over a period of time. When you're evaluating administrators, you need to look at their lesson plans. The lesson plans can be beautifully written, but the execution, and that is why you need to observe them and record the data. Because as I said, if we don't have data, you're going to miss things moving forward. Your CIT targets and your meeting minutes. Your curriculum implementation team is probably one of the most important tool that you have at hand in your school. It gives you a lot of information. It gives you information on teaching and learning, professional development, and things like those, your curriculum coverage, your benchmarking, things like those. And as I said, your observation checklist, these are things that you need to have proper records. Don't just say you do them, but when you have them at the end of each term, you make a effort to look at what is happening so that you can make adjustments as you go on. All right, number 9. How effectively does teaching support learning? Now, when we talk about that, how we're going back into the teacher now, and we're looking at the delivery of the content. So we're going back into the lesson plan. We're going back into the observations. I can't say it enough is that we need to observe our teachers. Because if we don't, we miss the things that we need to center around to move student learning. I know that we are busy sometimes, but we have to make an effort to make our jottings. And don't just keep them to yourself. You need to speak to the teacher as well. How effective is the teaching and the learning process taking place in your school? How are you going to answer this question if you don't have data? Right? Are the students learning as much as is expected? So you go back to what you did in question 2 by looking at student learning. If they're moving, when you look at over the terms, first term, second term, third term, are they moving? You're looking at your assessment practices. No, picture this. When I look into your mark book, I am seeing high averages, 80s, 90s, 100. And we're talking about accumulation of end of term, termly assessments, a monthly tests, all of those things. Everything is high. But when after a year, for instance, grade 5, I have a child that has been scoring 90 right through the year. And at the end of PEP, when I get back the result, that child is at beginning. That speaks something about your assessment practices. You may not agree with me, and I'm going to tell you why. If your assessment practices is not rigorous and the children are not being tested in not just simple recall, but they are tested, you're testing them, you're grooming them to answer the why and the how and to explain. If they are not being taught like that in the classroom or assessed like that continuously, that means it is foreign to them. When remember now that the ministry uses the same curriculum to test the children that you use to teach the children. So these are some of the things that you need to look at, your assessment practices. And when you compare your test to a sample test that they say, are we testing them the way how the type of questioning? And when we look at DOK levels don't just look at how you test them. DOK also looks at how you question the children in the classroom. Are you pulling on more than just recall from them? These are the things that you pick up in your monitoring of teaching, and you make adjustment to these things. So these are some of the things you evaluate while you're looking. So as I said, the SSC process it's not a simple walkover process. It's an actual meaningful, reflective process. If done the right way, you will get movements that you want to get. How do you encourage your teachers to do self-evaluation? No, this is a sore point. The teacher's going to write the lesson plans, but they're not going to evaluate them. These are the things that you need to look at. You have to evaluate to know where you're going. How do you know that teaching and learning take place? That's a question you need to ask. So, Miss, how did you know that Johnny has been learning how to multiply? I don't see any evaluation for the past weeks, but you said that they're learning. So things like those will happen. Now, major takeaways, as I said, look back at your assessment practices. Are the students learning as much? You have continuous assessment. How do you use the information? When we come in and we look at your information, we want to see, I'm looking at your data. You made an analysis, and I'm reading and I'm seeing where you said that they are doing, they are weak at so and so. But I have not seen where you have made an effort to do something with the information that you have seen. I'm not seeing the evidence. Don't put anything in your SSE that you cannot prove later down the road, please. Because as an EO, if an EO will come in and say to you, you send a report to your education officer, and I come in now to make check to see that what you say is what I'm seeing. The two of them not matching up. So if, in all honesty, if you think that, you don't give yourself a 3 for something when you know you must get a 1, you're unsatisfactory, and you need to work on it. So these are some of the things that you look at in self. Remember, it's a self-evaluation, and it needs to be a factual process. You're going to look at the description and analysis of the teacher's practice and innovations. That's what I was saying to you in terms of you're looking at their lesson planning, the delivery, the methodology, the training needs that will come up, the common planning sessions. What are the teachers doing in their common planning sessions? Are they making meaningful planning for learning? Are they using the time wisely? ICT integration is something that should be implemented now in today's society in every crevice and corner of your schools. Are they implementing these innovations into the classroom to enhance the teaching and learning? So you look at these things, differentiation instructions, attendance, etc. And the strengths and the weakness identified and explained. So once you do all of that and you can explain using your diagrams, you should be good. And this is aligned to, these things will come out in question 8 and 7 of your strategic objectives. How is your curriculum planned, adopted, and enriched to meet the students' needs? Now, your intervention programs. For instance, in Jamaica right now, for this school year, we have embarked on implementing reading programs into our schools. These are intervention programs. The high schools may have their numeracy programs to improve their numeracy pass rates, stuff like those. In your intervention programs, you must evaluate them. You have to evaluate them so that you can draw conclusions to put in your school self-evaluation. So if from September, you have written this beautiful intervention program for your reading, and you have not stopped in December to make your termly evaluation to say that we have made this effort so far, the program is just on paper. So don't just write intervention programs and don't evaluate them, because it does not give you any evidence to show that anything was going on in that program. And when the time comes, there'll be nothing to put in your SSE to move forward. How will you know that this program was successful last year? And what do you need to improve for the coming school year? Your curriculum implementation team, you're going to triangulate data, examples, meeting minutes, activities implemented, how the school caters to the gifted and students with special needs. Because the curriculum is for everyone. How are you catering to those who can't have access to the entire curriculum? So these are some of the things you look at in your SSE. Your lesson plans, your pull-out programs, your individual learning programs, your IIPs. You pull on data from that. So if you have different programs in your school that cater to smaller groups, data like this becomes important when you're answering this question. Your assessment policy must match with what you do in the school. So if your assessment policy says that I must test every 6 weeks and the teachers are doing different things around the school, Miss Brown, don't write no 6-week test and you don't know. That means there's no standardized program at the school. The policy is not being implemented good. So you review your assessment policy, make sure it is aligned to your reporting system, your grading system, things like those. If it's not, these are things that you make note of to fix in your SIP coming up. Your curriculum coverage, your mapping. Now, when we talk about coverage, we want to know if your team is able to cover at least 2 terms. Going into third term, you may not finish the third term, but you're there at the end of June. Now, if you're still, well, you talk about disasters, we know that those things will come in because Melissa would have cut down and cut back on some of the teaching and learning time. But on a regular school year now, if over the last 3 years you realize that grade 5 only gets to finish term 2 when June is here, it means that there's something going on with the pacing of the curriculum, and you need to look at what is causing this. Is it that the teacher not pacing properly? Is it that there's something wrong with the cohort of students make you have to be moving that slowly? Something like that. Curriculum mapping is how you map out these topics to connect to make sure that the learning is connecting the way that it should, spiraling. So you start from the simple to the complex. Your timetables, you're going to look to ensure that the students are getting the required amount of time based on the subjects. So if they should get 5 hours of mathematics and you have timetabled them for 3, it means that they're not getting enough time for mathematics based on ministry standards. So things like those you will look at. The focus of your curriculum implementation team, as I said to you, a wealth of knowledge will come out of your SIP. If your SIP is implemented effectively in your school, it plays a very important role. You pull your professional development topics from your CIT team. They do appraisals. They appraise clubs and society because clubs and societies is a part of the curriculum. They look at the assessment practices. They look at intervention and support for learning, the quality of planning, and the quality of the teaching and learning. Your CIT team can give you all of this information that you will need to focus and improve on question 7, 8. It goes back to policy and planning. So you're going to need that for question 10 when it talks about policy. And this was the example that I was talking to you about earlier. So just to recap, I was telling you that sometimes teachers have the content knowledge, they know the what, but the methodology is weak. So you look out for things like these when you're doing your appraisal, and this will help you to know what to target in your professional development. So you will bring in persons to improve teachers' knowledge of conceptual understanding in students. So you know that you know that the teacher know that 2 plus 2 is 4. They can tell the students that 2 plus 2 is 4. But when they must have the students explore how you get 2 plus 2 equal 4, that is a problem. Now that's where you do PD sessions to develop your teachers, things like those. When you're evaluating the curriculum planning and support, what you're effectively want to pull from this is that your curriculum offerings, adaptations, and modification are meeting the needs of all your students. So look at the program you're offering, look at the type of students you have. Now, if you have students that are sports inclined, if you have an all-girls school or an all-boys school, you know that your curriculum may be slightly skewed towards different types of curriculum offerings because boys more go for different type of sports. You know that you have those things to keep them interested different from the maths and the language and those basics subjects. So you offer those things. So you're looking at your offerings to ensure that you're meeting your vision and your mission. Are the things that we are implementing in our curriculum for the holistic development of these students, are these things going to help us to meet our vision and mission and our targets that we set for learning? And we're almost getting to the end of session 1. And how does the school ensure everyone's security, safety, health, well-being? Now, does your school have a safety and security policy? What does it say? Does your school safety and security policy? Now, what you'll find is that the safety and security will intertwine with the disaster risk management policy in some ways. So, for instance, are you having drills at school? Are you keeping it fresh in their mind that whenever they feel that shake, it's an earthquake and what they must do? Are you socializing the students in a way that they know that it's not safe to play on the road? It's not safe to go with strangers because the parents, sometimes the parents don't do these things. Is the school doing these things, implementing these things to let the children be aware of how to keep themselves safe and secure? You're also looking at how the infrastructure of the school is set up to keep the students safe and secure while they're in your care from age to 3. So you're examining your school programs in regards to that. Your health and nutrition, are you keeping in line with what the ministry says about healthy eating in schools? Is what is what is being offered at the school canteen, nutritious meals and affordable meals that the students are able to purchase and not be hungry at school. And it all goes back to the socioeconomic background that your school is located in. So that would give you the leeway to implement certain types of meals because the students can afford it. Right? When you look at the safety and security, when I go back to the drills, just want to make a point that I find that a lot of schools don't do drills for invasion. So these are some of the things that you look at. Yes, you may be in an area that you're in your mind, you may not likely be invaded by gunmen or something, but never say never. So this is something that you must look at in your SSC if you're looking at fire, earthquake, and invasion drills. Disaster risk management, they know what to do in different times of disaster. Now that COVID came and thrown us in a bubble, you look at these things going down the line. Are we prepared for these type of disasters, pandemics, and those things going forward as a school? What do we need to fix? All right. So we'll look at that, your signage, your logging of the books, who picks up who can come into school to interact with your child, fencing, all of those things. Frequency of drills, did that. Arrangements to ensure the health of the students. Programs like SWEBIS has to do with the whole development of the child. Mm. And this is aligned to strategic objective question number 9. And we're getting there. So the relationship that the school has with the community. Now, assess the involvement of your parents in your school. And we don't just look at how many parents attend PTA. That is part of the data. Remember that you will have, depending on the level of school that you have. So like for the infants and the primary schools, you will be able to look at data of the level of participation you have from the parents in terms of getting the resources the student needs, them book, them pencil, them lunch money, them school uniform, things like those. How many students don't have books? These are things you will know that your parent involvement. So not just attendance, you pull on other data like this. If the school has a past student association, and you're going to speak to its contribution to the school. So the old boys and the old girls, and if it's not a boy and girl school, just PSA on a whole. Are you getting them to contribute to where they're coming from? If not, this is something that you need to look at in your SIP baseline data. The school has no past student association. Remember now, no, that your PSA, these are human resources and they're going to come in with financial resources, or they may know someone that they can recommend to pull to carry in something, because you want to pull in everybody to contribute to your school. So you're evaluating what you have and what you're going to need to the success of this beautiful plan that you're going to write. List the activities that the school initiate for the community. For some schools, they have relationship with communities where they can use their play field for sporting events. They use the school grounds for events in the community. Some schools are used as churches, things like those. Do your PTA come in and do community projects in the school? You may build here, so fix here, so when it's Labor Day, do they come in? So all of this you're going to look at and evaluate. And if you're going to write your baseline data now, and you're going to say, how can I improve the parents' participation in the school? And this is aligned to question number 1. Question number 1 in the strategic objective speaks to parental involvement and stakeholder relationships. And then how do you rate the relationship with students and stakeholders? Now, relationship is a two-part process. So you want to know how the students interact with themselves, how they interact with their students, how their peers, how they interact with their teachers, their peers, how they interact with other workers on the compound. Do they just respect the teachers, or you ensure that they respect everyone that is a part of the school community? So you evaluate things like those. How the stakeholders interact with us as school. Are we accessible as a school? Can they come in and ask questions? Can they come in and get information from us about their child and about the school? How is the school doing? Do you make it your point of duty to share information about the school? How is the school is operating at 50% literacy? You're going to share that at your PTA to say that we're at 50 and we're working towards 60, and we need your help as parents to do so and so and so. These are things that you look at if you are pulling on all the resources that you have in your hands to help you to move as a school. Now, we have in our disposal as administrators some surveys: student survey, staff survey, parent survey. Now, these are some of the questions that they're asked, and based on what they say, we can get some vital information. Children in my school behave well. That can help you to know how the students feel about the whole behavior of the school, right? And the parents would be asked the same question, but in a different way. They're asked if you think that the student at this school, they behave well. And that will tell you how they're looking out they're looking on the inside, I mean. How do they feel about the school and the whole behavior management? Parents are asked about the teaching and learning, if they feel that their child is being supported at school. And then the students themselves, I mean, they're asked if they feel that they're learning. How do they feel in class? My teacher encourages me to learn and do my best. So you pull on things like those. And if you're weak in these areas, you know that you need to implement something to that the teachers know that they need to motivate the students. Because remember, no, it's not all about book. We have to develop their social skills, all of those things to make a complete package. So this is some of the information that is pulled from the survey, and it's color coded. It will tell you where you plug back the information in your SSE. I like my school, it will tell you the relationship with the student and stakeholders. The children are kind to each other. It gives you information about their social development. My school is clean and tidy. It also go back to question 4. I feel safe at school, safety and security. My school is a good school. Tells you how they feel about the school. And if they want to come to school every day, they're happy to be here. If school not keeping, they're sad. So the percentage based on what you pull in will give you a lot of information about their thoughts, and you can use that information to move forward with your SSE. All right. How effectively is your school led and managed? Now, as administrators, I know that you want to give yourself a good mark for this one, but you have to try to be objective when you're answering this part of the question. I would like to give myself a 4. But when I look at all the other things, the student learning, the quality of my staff, everything else leading up to this is weak. That means I can't get a 4 because I'm the head of the ship and the ship is sinking at the back. So when we're evaluating the part that said, how is the school led and managed, we need to be objective and just speak it like it is. So you're going to look back at the SSE that we're talking about now. So the planning, how as administrators you plan, your school action plan, teachers action plan, the school evaluation matrix, your SSE, your SIP. Stakeholder involvement, the quality of the plans. The school board, how effective is your school board? Are they involved in your school? Are they a part of your SIP team? Is your chairman and the other members of the school board involved in the activities at school? They are informed about what is going on at school. They make it their point of duty to know, to find out what is going on. They're knowledgeable about their school. Is this happening? These are the things that you need to evaluate. As I just said, how involved is the board in the school activities? Record keeping is another important thing that you look at. So, is the school keeping proper records? Can I find records and data that I need easily about the school. Not only having the records, but monitoring them, implementing them, evaluating them from time to time. You're looking at the teacher, the planning sessions, the classroom observation, the staff meetings. As an administrator, are you looking at these things to ensure that they are being done effectively? The different committees, the documentation, and the use of the data. So all of these things, that's what I said to you just now. In grading how the school is led and managed, you have to look at the overall picture. If everything is coming together and as a package, you're moving forward, then you'll be able to give yourself a good grade. Leadership and policy making. So you guys, as I said, you're going to pull on evidence for board involvement. If you're having board meetings, what was discussed, what was shared, level of participation. Is your senior management team in place? Is there instructional supervision, responsibility clearly stated? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? Are you ensuring that they're doing what they're supposed to do? Analysis of the management performance, your capacity building, your SMT action plan, the development of various policies. This is part of leadership and a part of how you evaluate as a team of leaders leading an institution. Comprehensive evidence of board, well, I said that already. All right. Now, this information will be needed to answer question 6, 4, and from 8 to 10 when you get over to the SIP. So this is just a way of telling you that when you finish analysis and you get your baseline data, this is where you put your baseline data when you get over to that part. And the very last question that you're going to answer in your SIP is, what are the problems facing the school in recent times? Now, depending on where you are and the type of environment that you work in, you may have different problems. Some may have population, overpopulation, underpopulation. You may work in an area that is very violent. Type of community. The children can't come out because all sort of things happening around them. It flood easily, those things. These are problems that you talk about. You're evaluating them. Some of them cannot be solved by the school. For instance, if the road going to the school is very bad, the school cannot solve that problem, but they can lobby with other stakeholders and push to get help. Spacing is another issue. So as I said, it depends on your environment as a school, the problems will come up. Academics is another problem, and you're going to say, what are you doing about it? So you're going to speak to, after you list the problems that you are facing, what you have been doing about it to alleviate the issue and the current status. And then that's where the SSC is summarized. Now, when you are doing the presentation of your data, don't just use words. Some of us are visual. So I may write, and give this nice descriptive analysis, but sometimes a graph may give me a better picture of where you are. So it is recommended that when you are answering questions in your SSE, you use tables, graphs, pictures, and other evidence to support what you're writing. For some regions, they request that these are placed within when you're answering the questions at the same time, while others request that you may make reference to it. So you may say, the students are, the pass rates increased from 45% to 60% in 2025, as shown in figure 1.2. Figure 1.2 may not be right there in that descriptive paragraph, but when I turn around to the back in your appendix, I can see figure 1.2 and I can look at what you are saying and I look at the data and I can look for myself and I said, yes, this is what is happening. So I'll take your questions now. I will take your questions, how to look at the SSE information. You may ask your questions now relating to the SSE.
There are
And we will,
there are a few questions in the chat. I'd like to read these questions in the chat for you. The first question, oh, by the way, excellent presentation.
thank you.
I want to commend you. I was having some kind of flashback because I just retired, and some of these things you're talking about, I was involved and said, "Listen, she is on target." I commend you for great work, great presentation. Uh, Here's the first question. It says, this might be relevant to Jamaica. I'm not sure if if it involves all the other countries. Does the ministry send the individual school breakdown data for the 4 to 6 exams in the form of graph representation?
All right. So since 2025, what they have been doing is they sent out a publication with your results. So what they did was they gave you some graphs. So they give you comparison for national and regional. National and not regional. Yes, by region. Yeah. Mhm. So they will show you what your school looks like um in terms of in the national pass rate. So for instance, your school is Appleby. They will show you what Appleby 50% in literacy at the grade 4 level looks like against all other schools. So they will say the national pass rate is 65%. They will show you your 50% against the national pass rate. So they send graphs to show that comparison. They do gender, they have inserted comparisons for gender. They give you recommendations based on your strengths and weaknesses. They give you recommendations as to what the students you can do in the school to improve what they have found. So that's why I'm saying that it has become a little bit easier in terms of some of the data that you are going to break down because the ministry has now moved into breaking down the PEP results for you so that it's a little bit easier so you can just pull now and make other comparisons. So you're able, and they do it for 3 years for you as well. So I said they have given them a wealth of information going forward.
Okay, thank you. The
And
second question.
they do it for 4, 5, and 6, sorry. Currently.
Okay, this other question, I think there's a little bit of, it's not so clear. I'm going to see if I can interpret it somewhat. It says, can the school administration combine the CSEC results and City and Guilds results for any subject? And then I think they're asking, do they compare this year's result with the previous year, etc.?
All right. So as a school, when you're going to do your comparative analysis, you're going to do it for 3 years. So if you're going to do SSC for this year, you're going to pull on data for 2025, 2024, and 2023 because you want a comparative analysis. You're not going to mix CSEC and City and Guilds. You're going to do one comparison for City and Guilds. City and Guilds have their own standards. They use a different curriculum from CSEC. The students are tested in two different ways. So your target for City and Guilds and improving your passes for City and Guilds would be different from how you move towards engaging students for CSEC because they're not tested in the same way. So it means that you can't combine these results. You have to separate them. They're two different examining bodies that require two different things.
Okay, thank you. Okay, two other questions, Mike, but maybe we might be able to address this differently. Will the slides be available to the participants or not? Or no?
No,
Dr. Dice?
no. We're on YouTube channel, so they can go back and review it.
No, that's what I'm asking, if they will be available to ESI, so
Oh yeah,
they,
sure.
okay, right, so these questions are answered. They're asking, can you go back to the slide showing question 4, please, and can you show the library slide on red face? But those will be sent to ESI, and they will be accessible by you, those to
Okay.
the participants. Dr. Dice, could you just check for me on YouTube if there are any questions?
Right now there are no questions, but they are bigging up the presentation. That is the workshop is very good, very informative information that was
Yeah,
delivered.
okay. I have a question, and how do you guard against subjectivity? Because certain things are, numbers are there and your data is there, but of course, if you're going to be assessing your own school, etc., you will, you want to look good.
As
How
I
do you guard
said,
against
yeah,
subjectivity?
you have to be as truthful as remember when I was talking about leadership, you as a leader, you'd want to give yourself the highest grade. So the SSC is scored from 1 to 4, I think. Let me pull back on the slide. Each question is scored from, let me find a practical example for you. All right, so it's scored from unsatisfactory to good. To find an example for you, just give me a minute. All right, let me just insert this into a slide because I don't want to sensitive information. All right, let me share this back now. All right, so this is how you score yourself. So you start from poor to excellent. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots. And the last slot is good. So when you look at what is going on, as I said, you have to try to be as truthful as possible because when the national body comes in to do their own school self-evaluation, if what you have presented does not match up to what they found, it means that you did not do a good job in your self-evaluation. So I said I would say be brutally honest. If you know that you must get the one, give yourself your one. Because at the end of the day, you will know that you have all these things to fix. Instead, don't give yourself three and you know that you lack these major points to fix problems that you need to fix in your school. And you paint a picture that everything is well. And sometimes maybe this will hinder you from getting the outside support that is well needed in the school. But because you say that everything is nice and dandy, you'll be overlooked.
All right. And
So you have to try to be as truthful as possible. Say what the data is saying. If it says that the children are operating on the unsatisfactory, say it.
thank you for that. You mentioned something during your presentation was so pointed as it relates to assessment, your formative assessments that are given, those tests that you develop within the school system to check for learning. They have to be based on the standards, because I've seen situations in my lifetime in education where students would be getting A's and B's and they're on the honor roll, and when the state test results came out, the scores were low, and that is a judgment on the educator. So we really need to spend more time developing common formative assessments and common rubrics, and make sure that the power standards are taken into account, etc. We cannot overemphasize that, because what you said there is not just theoretical; it does happen in real life.
It does happen in real life. As a curriculum coordinator, what we ensure is that we set a standard and we will let the teachers know that when you're setting your test paper, a certain percentage must be at DOK 1,
Mhm.
DOK 2, and DOK 3 to ensure that the paper is balanced. The
Yes.
students are being tested on not just what they can recall,
Hmm.
but to show that they have developed some form of understanding and how to apply this.
Yes. Awesome. That's I would love to hear you give a presentation just on that alone one of these days. We got a call in you, all right? Anyway, there are a couple of commendations I really need to mention here. One person says this is a very informative presentation. Another person said, love the presentation. I could visualize what was being shared, and you are so right. Learning is much more than the student ability to recall. He said, this presentation gave me a lot of clarity. So we have some commendations. Oops, we have some commendations here for you in this. Oh, what's happening here? I'm here. Yes. All right. Let me see if there's any other question. I'm scrolling down. This person says, I am not an administrator, but I understood so much because the presentation was very detailed. So we couldn't leave without giving you those kudos because I was really impressed. All right, Dr. Dye.